from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you on this Tuesday evening. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, we'll be taking calls throughout the whole show tonight, actually, because I know we have a couple of guests that you're probably going to want to talk to. So we're going to build that into the show to make sure you have an opportunity. So if you're a first-time caller, feel free. If you've called a million times, feel free. I think you're going to want to talk to these guys that we've got coming up. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Now, there's a bunch of news out there today, and we're going to get to all of it slowly but surely. But there's a few things that stuck out to me today. One of them is the fact that our president, Joe El Baboso Biden, is in New York City. And you would think he's going to hang out with all his Democrat pals. But you know who he's not hanging out with? Elite Eric Adams. That's right, the mayor of New York City. These guys are at odds. And as far as I know, there's not going to be any meeting of the minds between Joe El Baboso Biden and Elite Eric Adams. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall if there was a meeting, right? I could just imagine. Mr. Mayor, we need help. We got too many illegal immigrants. Oh, come on, man. I got hurt legs. And, and some sort of other platitudes that he would put out there to deflect from the fact that things are going crazy. I saw a video. Either somebody sent it to me on Instagram or I scrolled across it. But fascinating video. It's one of these many people that are down at the border reporting. And the video shows a bunch of people, I guess they're called asylum seekers today. Others call them migrants. I'm going to call them illegal aliens, right? Or soon-to-be illegal aliens because they were still on the Mexico side. And they're trekking. They got backpacks on. And then they zoom in, and the guy starts asking them questions, and he's speaking to them in Spanish. And they all have their backs to the camera. And then they turn around, and none of them are Hispanic. And he says, oh, where do you come from? And visibly, you could see that they're all Asian. And he's saying, where are you from? They don't understand a word of what he's saying. And he says, China? Chinese? And then they all shake their head yes. And it was just fascinating. I mean, it had to be at least 150, just men. It was just young men of apparently Asian heritage. And it just goes to show you that there is a free-for-all at the southern border. This has nothing to do with everything the Democrats and the progressive liberals will tell you about the Northern Triangle and how we disrupted things and we went and messed things up in South and Central America, and now we have to pay the price for disrupting their country. They have to come here. and that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, even if it did make sense, ask for money. You need money? We got to go fix something? Let's go fix it. Doesn't mean we have to give you a home. Absolutely insane. But anyway, these young Asian men are there trekking. And it makes me think, a couple of weeks ago, we saw it with a bunch of men coming from the continent of Africa, Northern Africa in particular. Now we're seeing it from Asia, right? It looks like China in particular. And this, to me, is just like, wow, hold on a second. It's one thing to be charitable with your immigration policies. It's another thing to just say that you're securing the border while you're really just letting in massive amounts of people from all over the place. For what purpose? Now, we all can speculate. I speculate that they want to have more people in the district so that these districts, take two, so that these districts can say they have more people and therefore ask for more money. But there's more. There's got to be more to this idea that we're just going to open a door to absolutely everybody, because lamentably, this country is paying a price for that. So I can only imagine what a conversation between Joe El Baboso Biden and good old elite Eric Adams would be like. We're also going to get into some conversation on this new universal voter registration, because today the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, he says, well, we're going to register 100% of the people. 100% of everybody is going to get a ballot. They're going to be eligible to vote, and now you are registered to vote, and now you can go and just go ahead and vote. And I think this is problematic because it's never worked that way, right? And it hasn't ever worked that way, not because somebody forgot or because somebody overlooked it, but because voting is something that you have to actively go and do, right? You go and you register to vote, and once you're registered to vote, then you actually go and vote. There's a little bit of work involved, and I think it should be that way. And again, you can make the argument that I'm old and antiquated and I don't want to help people, but I believe we are doing a grand disservice to anybody when we're just automatically registering them. Now, the argument will be we want to increase civic participation. However, the grand problem here, in my opinion, would be if a third of people in the country never vote, they've never voted at all, then why would we register these people? Because on election day, you're going to have a third of the voting universe that would not have voted, that are registered to vote. Now, again, the argument's going to be, well, at least now if they want to vote, they can just show up and do what they got to do. Wrong. The reason that's wrong is because when you don't register, you're not going to vote. When you do register, you typically are going to vote. If everybody's registered, at the end of election night, which should be one night, not a whole month, but whatever, you're going to have all these registered voters, people who had no intention on voting anyway, and now it opens up the room, it makes room for fraud. Because people can go and use so-and-so's name and go ahead and vote. Or say, oh, these people haven't voted by 7 p.m. This is the list of people that are registered to vote that haven't voted. And if there's a GOTV get out the vote effort, you can go and knock on those doors and say, hello, it's time to come and vote. And if they go, no, I'm good. I'm walking the dog, shampooing my hair, and I got to take the garbage out. I'm good. I don't want to go. Now we know that we have this vote available if we are corrupt individuals. And as we've heard in the past, and if you haven't ever seen the documentaries on PBS or ever spoken with somebody from Texas, in South Texas, there's these gangs of people, these groups of people called politiqueras. Many of them are older Hispanic women that go out there and buy votes. And the most elaborate schemes they've pulled were to just, when ballots are bulk dropped, mail-in ballots or absentee ballots, they have a deal with the post carriers, the USPS workers, and they would get the entire package of these ballots for people to be able to do mail-in voting. So this is obviously problematic, and the FBI has been on this, and they've arrested many people over the years for this. They're called politiqueras with a QU. And if it's happening in Texas, it can happen anywhere. If we increase the amount of registration everywhere, then guess what happens? We potentially can increase the amount of fraud. Makes nothing but sense. Anyway, I want to jump into a little bit of conversation on a few different things. What's going on with the prosecution of attorneys? You know, just because you represent Trump or anybody else that somebody may not like, we're now going to go after you and your lawyer so that you don't have any defense? Or so that future lawyers will say, no, I'm not touching this guy, not touching that case with a 10-foot pole. And remember that whole Nexium sex cult scandal? I want to get an update on that, too, and we're going to do that straight ahead. So don't go anywhere. Again, our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. And we're going to jump into a number of topics here with somebody who's an expert on a lot of these topics. He is Harvard Law School professor emeritus. He's written, I don't know, a ton of books. You see him on TV all the time. He was part of the O.J. Simpson defense a million years ago. This is a legend in the legal world, and he's our guest right now. Professor Alan Dershowitz, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I want to get into this Nexium scandal, your new book, and lots of other things that I want to discuss with you. But I want to start off with an article that you wrote in Newsweek. And it's fascinating because I think you're pointing out a legal problem that you say is dangerous, and I agree that it is.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's incredibly underrepresented in everywhere, whether it's conservative media, any media. I don't think there's enough people talking about how we're attacking the actual rule of law and one's ability and their Sixth Amendment right to defend themselves. And the title of the piece in Newsweek is "Prosecuting Lawyers for Their Legal Representation is dangerous to us all." And I couldn't agree with you more. So walk us through it a little bit.
Lawyers are terrified today to take controversial cases. They know that if they represent people like Donald Trump or Keith Raniere or others who are unpopular, unliked, people are going to come after them. There's an organization called the 65 Project, a group of radical McCarthyite lawyers who have as their goal to try to discipline and disbar any lawyer who represents people they don't approve of. So when they first came out and announced what they were doing, I announced that I would represent anybody for free, any lawyer who was targeted by the 65 Project for representing people like Donald Trump. I don't like Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him, but I defend his rights. As soon as I announced that I would represent anybody who was targeted by the 65 Project, what do you think they did? They filed a bar complaint against me. Now, once you have a bar complaint filed against you, you can't represent people in states other than the one you're licensed to practice in. And so by filing this complaint, they have made it difficult, maybe even impossible, for me to keep my promise to represent people who are being targeted by the 65 Project. It's pure, old-fashioned McCarthyism, but it's worse than the original McCarthyism. Why? The original McCarthyism was brought to us by old people. It was about the past. It was about, did people have communist or socialist affiliations in the 1930s? The new McCarthyism is about the future. It's about young people who are going to be our future leaders, young members of the bar who are going after people who represent clients they don't like. So it's a great, great danger. I think the new McCarthyism can easily become the new Americanism if we don't stop it.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, when we look at something like this, to me, this seems like a very, very, very dirty legal trick to try and slow you down and for their own legal benefits.
There's no question. I mean, it grew out. Yeah, it grew out of the fact that I filed as of counsel, just a consultant, in a lawsuit which was challenging Arizona's method of counting ballots by machines that the companies refused to subject their machines to adversarial testing. They say, look, we're private businesses, but they're not. They're doing the government's job of counting ballots. So I consulted on a case challenging for the future the use of machines unless they're willing to subject themselves to adversarial testing. And as a result of that, this bar charge has been filed against me. I did obviously the right thing. You're supposed to challenge things that may endanger the accuracy of elections or the credibility of elections. So I'm proud of having done that. And now, again, they're coming after me and they're coming after others. I can afford to fight back, and I am fighting back. But a lot of lawyers can't fight back against these bar charges. They have to get out of the business of practicing law, or they have to just, submit to whatever the 65 Project wants them to submit to. And that endangers everybody because, you never think you need a lawyer until you need one. And
Right.
You don't want a lawyer who's terrified by bar associations or the 65 Project or others who are coming after them. You want a lawyer who's prepared to fight for your rights and not have to be concerned about their own status as members of the bar. And that's exactly what the 65 Project is trying to do.
Now, shouldn't there be, or are there, my question to you, is safeguards in place or guardrails to prevent lawyers from being unscrupulous and doing this, to prevent you from practicing, whether it's pro hoc vice or in another jurisdiction that you're admitted?
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite. Not only there are guardrails, but many members of the bar and many bar associations are siding with the McCarthyites, just the way they did in the 1950s. Remember, there were no guardrails when in the 1950s, bar associations went after people who they perceived as defending communists. I was too young to be a lawyer, but I was president of the student government at Brooklyn College, and I stood up for the rights of people who were perceived to be socialists or communists to teach. And as a result of that, the president of the university wouldn't recommend me to law school. So, it goes back a long time, but I thought it was over. You'd think that after McCarthyism, we'd learn our lesson. But today, it's the hard left that's producing this new McCarthyism.
What's your recommendation for somebody that receives this scarlet letter and unfairly?
Call me. That's the first thing. And I'll arrange for somebody to represent you. If I can do it, I will. I like to keep my promises. If it's in a state where I can practice, I'll do it. If not, I'll get somebody who can do it. But we can't just capitulate to these radical, woke, progressive McCarthyites, because they're trying to destroy the legal system. Remember, they think they know the truth. And if they know the truth, capital T, why do you need an adversary system? What do you need lawyers? What do you need due process? What do you need free speech? You don't need free speech if there's the truth and everybody knows the truth. Dissenting opinions are just barriers to achieving the peace, and that's what the new woke progressives are doing. They're eliminating all of our constitutional rights in the name of their kind of progressive woke programs.
And that's coming from you, a self-proclaimed liberal Democrat.
I am. I'm a liberal. I'm a libertarian. I've been a Democrat all my life. I've never voted for a Republican presidential candidate. I might someday. I made a mistake. I should have voted for Mitt Romney instead of Barack Obama for his second term. I acknowledge that was a mistake. But then I don't know who I'm going to vote for this time. But I've always voted Democrat. And I've always been a liberal. I was the youngest member of the National Board of the American Civil Liberties Union. I was called by by Newsweek magazine, the most peripatetic civil liberties lawyer in the country. And I'm today very much against the progressive woke attempts to deny us our civil liberties. And the worst aspects of it is when you're trying to represent somebody who is out of fashion, who is unpopular, who is politically incorrect, whether it be Donald Trump or Keith Raniere. You're surprised to hear I make a comparison between the two, but they both have in common that the liberal establishment despises them, and they don't care about due process or free speech or civil liberties. They're now trying to put a gag order on Donald Trump. You'd think the ACLU would get involved in that case, but they haven't.
They've been silent. Folks, we're on with Professor Alan Dershowitz, and straight ahead, we're going to talk about his new book, Get Trump. Again, liberal Democrat, former Harvard law professor, and he's got a book on Trump, and he says it's not good to go after lawyers. I completely agree. Look at that. Me agreeing with a liberal Democrat. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez with Professor Dershowitz. We're coming right back.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're going to continue our conversation with our guest, Professor Alan Dershowitz. He's a Harvard Law School professor emeritus and the author of a new book, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Professor Dershowitz, before you get into the book, where do you think we embarked on this departure from, in this partisan departure from following the Constitution? Because it seems to be that way.
There's no question it's that way. It's the woke left young people who are sure of the certainty of their views, and they just find due process to be a barrier to the truth. They want to make sure that any man who's accused of any improper conduct toward a woman has no due process. Yale University, for example, is being sued now because they had a case in which a young man who was acquitted by a jury but was disciplined by Yale, they wouldn't allow him to cross-examine. They wouldn't allow him to be in the room. The fact finder just simply accepted what the woman had said without giving the defendant any chance. And that's typical now at what's going on at universities. And, in universities, if people want to make a case for Israel, for example, they can't do it. If they want to make the case for Donald Trump, they can't do it. If they want to make a conservative argument on how the Constitution should be interpreted, they can't do it. Harvard University was ranked last in the country for free speech rights by an organization that monitors free speech. I think some of it got worse under the Trump administration because people on the left, the hard left, the woke, that Trump is Adolf Hitler. And since anybody would do anything to stop Adolf Hitler, including assassination, they know no limits on what they're prepared to do to stop Donald Trump from being reelected. They're not advocating assassination, although one professor at some Midwest university did say that merely stopping conservative speakers is not enough. Killing them is what we should do. So there is a real movement away from classic liberalism and classic conservatism. Remember that classic liberalism and classic conservatism has much in common. Tolerance, openness to ideas, free speech. I used to debate William Buckley. I was a classical liberal. He was a classical conservative. We would argue about things, and then at the end, we'd go out and have a drink, and I would say to him, you persuaded me on this argument, but not that argument. And he'd say the same thing to me. That's not happening anymore in the United States, certainly not on campuses.
When we look at the premise of your book, and again, I think the title is really giving here. Get Trump, the threat to civil liberties, due process, and our constitutional rule of law. I believe that this is so well put. There really is a threat to all of those things. And it's not just political or partisan in nature. It may derive from that, but it's a real thing where people are really having to defend themselves. Like we just mentioned, some aren't even able to get lawyers to defend themselves. Even Trump, they're trying to limit his own defense right now with all of these things.
There's no question. I have to tell you, I have 4 lawyers who called me over the past couple of months who said that Trump or his people wanted to have them defend him, and he wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they're afraid of being attacked by the 65 project. So there's no doubt it's having a big impact. And, today it's Trump, but tomorrow it's your uncle or your son or your daughter who can't get a lawyer because they're afraid of what's going to happen. So, and the bar associations and the civil liberties union, they're not stepping up. They support this McCarthyism. That's the problem. Back in the 50s, they opposed it, but now they support it, and so it's moving in the wrong direction.
You discuss the essence of justice in the book. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the title of the book is not original with me. Get Trump. It was the campaign slogan, essentially, that the Attorney General of New York and the District Attorney of Manhattan ran on.
Right.
They ran on the program. Let's get Trump, and if we don't get Trump, don't vote for us. And so, they made getting Trump a political goal. And of course, as the Chief Judge of New York Court of Appeals once said, any prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. And so it's easy to get an indictment. The indictment in Manhattan is the weakest thing I've seen in 60 years of practicing law. But they might get a conviction because this is a district where, 75% of the people hate Trump. So you're not going to be able to get a fair trial. In District of Columbia, it's even worse. It's over 90% that probably hate Trump. And so, the system of justice is being skewed somewhat terribly. And, that this is Trump. Everybody knows about that. There are other cases, I say, like the Keith Raniere case, where people are not aware of the possibility, the strong likelihood that that evidence was tampered with. And that's just, if that's done and the government can get away with tampering with evidence, with changing the dates on films and doing things of that kind, none of us has a chance. I mean, the greatest lawyer in the world can't win a case when the evidence is tampered with and turned into something that it isn't. And that's why I'm so interested in what's going on in the Keith Raniere case.
While your scholarship is appreciated and your activism on this issue of defending the Constitution and civil liberties is notable, do you feel that in your lifetime and in the rest of my lifetime that there's going to be an end or a reversal of this perversion of our legal system?
Well, I just turned 85, so,
Happy
if
birthday.
the good Lord
God bless
gives
you.
me, thank you. It gives me another good 10 years, I think we can help reverse this. It's going to take 10 years, though. It's not going to happen overnight. If Trump were to be defeated fair and square, overwhelmingly, in what he would have to concede is a fair election, some of this might turn around. But I think others of it has become so entrenched in our legal system that it's going to take a decade to undo it, if we can undo it at all. The McCarthyism was undone very quickly, very quickly. I think the world realized that McCarthy was, a drunk and a liar, and he had no credibility. Whereas today, the people who are bringing us the new McCarthyism are decent people, and they're presentable, and they're our children. And so it's going to be much harder to reverse the new McCarthyism than it was to reverse the old McCarthyism.
What's your admonition to reverse this?
Well, I think everybody has to get into this fight. It doesn't matter whether you are pro-Trump or anti-Trump, liberal, conservative, Democrat, or Republican. You have to fight to preserve the Constitution. You have to tell the people on your side that you can't tolerate this denial of due process, the denial of free speech, the denial of basic liberties. We should all be libertarians, whether we're conservative libertarians or liberal libertarians. But being a supporter of liberty is something that every American should join.
Amen to that. Folks, we're on with Professor Alan Dershowitz, and he's got a new documentary that's out there, Con Job, the new NXIVM investigation. We're going to talk about that and the latest on the sex cult saga. So stick with us. Again, our phone number, if you have a question or a comment, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
From Hollywood stars to corporate elites, thousands followed Keith Raniere on a mission to change the world.
Raniere, who described himself as a self-help guru, was sentenced to 120 years behind bars.
Then his world came crashing down.
The leader of an alleged sex cult has been arrested in Mexico.
Convicted of crimes stemming from a secret society of women called DOS, where Raniere was called master.
DOS has been grossly misrepresented.
Just because someone's lifestyle may be different than yours doesn't mean that is wrong.
Since 2017, we've heard about NXIVM, the cult-like organization where there were sex slaves getting branded with Keith Raniere's initials on their pelvis and all sorts of things that have come out of that. And our guest, Professor Alan Dershowitz, is going to share some updates on this investigation in a new documentary. Professor, what say you?
Well, the major piece of evidence that convicted Keith Raniere was a series of photographs of allegedly young underage girl, and it was dated at a time when we know the birth certificate of the girl, she would have been underage. But we've now had numerous experts, including former FBI agents and experts in how these dating things occur on computers, who have sworn under oath, without a doubt, in their minds, that the dates were changed, and that, in fact, the female in the picture was over the age of consent at the time when these pictures were allegedly taken. If that's true, the whole case falls apart. And what the defense is looking for is a hearing at which the people who dated the picture are called, in which the experts who dispute the dating are called. And why is the government afraid of a hearing? Why is the government afraid to put witnesses under oath? The goal of a hearing of this kind is to get at the truth. And if the truth is, as these experts say it is, that these photographs and the dates were tampered with, there's no American who should want to see a conviction based on that. There should be a new trial. Let's see what a jury does without these very, very, very prejudicial photographs that, according to experts, were manipulated, distorted, and doctored. We can't just allow these allegations by experts to remain unverified or undisputed or disputed, but unresolved. That's what we have a legal system for. And all the defense wants is an opportunity to have an evidentiary hearing at which the truth comes out, whichever way the truth comes out. That's what the American public should be interested in.
So now the founder, Keith Raniere, he was sentenced to 120 years in federal prison for sex trafficking and other crimes. And you're saying the linchpin here is the metadata in these photos.
That's right.
If that's the case, I guess the allegation is that the government, in their prosecution, decided to falsify evidence, which we saw happen with the Trump stuff, with the emails that were tampered with and whatnot. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. Do you
look? I've had a number of cases. The O.J. Simpson case, we proved beyond a doubt that Officer Van Adder poured blood from O.J. Simpson and from the victims on a sock that was laying flat, and we were able to demonstrate that to a jury, which then acquitted the defendant, even though there was other evidence of his possible guilt. And I've had a number of cases over my 60-year career where people have tampered with the evidence. And, we would like to establish at a hearing the chain of custody, who had access to this metadata, who could have tampered with it, who did tamper with it. We're not painting with a broad brush and saying every single person in the government is corrupt. It could be, one person or a group of people. In the O.J. Simpson case, it was two people who basically got together, one of them who did the tampering and the other one who was fully aware of it. But as I say, I've seen numerous cases in my career where individuals who are well-intentioned, they think they know that the defendant is guilty. They're just helping the process along by creating incriminating evidence. But that's not the way the American system is supposed to work. So there should be a hearing, and experts should be allowed to testify, and let the judge make a decision subject to appellate review.
Do you get a lot of flack for defending someone that's been accused of such egregious crimes?
Oh, of course. Oh, without a doubt. When you're a criminal defense lawyer, as I've been for so many years, you're hated and you're loved. If you defend somebody who people like, they love you. And if you defend somebody who they don't, they hate you. I remember when I was representing at the same time Mike Milken, the financier, and Mike Tyson, the boxer, people would come over to me at the airport and say, "Alan, I love what you're doing for Mike." And I would have to wonder which Mike they had in mind, because almost nobody wanted me to be defending both of the Mikes. But if you're going to be a defense lawyer, you can't decide who to defend based on who you like or who people like. John Adams set the standard when he represented the people who produced the Boston Massacre. Imagine anybody less popular in Boston than British redcoat soldiers who shot and killed protesters in downtown Boston who were throwing snowballs at them. And John Adams knew he was possibly destroying his career and his future. He didn't in the end because we were a more tolerant country then. But he took great risks by defending these people and came back with a mixed verdict. Some were guilty, some were less guilty. But that's what he did, and that's what all lawyers should do. Abraham Lincoln defended very bad people, very, very guilty people. Thurgood Marshall defended people who were horrible killers and rapists. That's what criminal defense lawyers do. And, many of our clients are guilty because that's the way it is. In America, most people charged with a crime are guilty, but not all. And that's why in a case like Keith Raniere, where the experts say he's innocent of the fundamental charge, you have to get to the bottom of that. You can't let it just linger there with suspicions and allegations. And, let them appoint a special counsel to look into this. Let's have a hearing. Let's just get to the bottom of it. Everybody has an interest in finding out what really happened. If there was tampering, as the experts say there was, this verdict cannot be allowed to stand.
Professor, for those that are listening that want to continue to find out what's going on with this case, with Keith Raniere and everything else that you're working on, how do they keep in touch with you?
Well, I have a website through Harvard, and you can Google me. I'm on Twitter or whatever they call it now, X. And, I have close to 500,000 followers, and I tweet periodically. I'm not a high-tech guy, but I can tweet a little bit. And, you can read my books. I mean, I write about most of the things that I do. I've written 52 books, and I'm on 50. I finished 53. And I'm about halfway through 54, so I'm trying to get to 60. We'll see if I make it.
That's it? I'm kidding. Folks, we're on with Professor Alan Dershowitz. Check out his book, his latest book, Get Trump. And, Professor, I want to thank you for being with us. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you being here with us, staying up late.
Well, you ask great questions, and I appreciate being on your show. Thank you.
Likewise. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So there's yet another contender in the race for 2024. He's coming out of New Jersey, a New Jersey Republican, and we're going to hear about his campaign in a little bit. And I'm always interested to hear from these candidates because obviously it's a long shot because it's a crowded field. There's a lot of people running for president, but I'm always interested in learning why they're running, right? Why are you running for president? Because I think it matters, and I'm glad that they are. That's why I try to have as many of the candidates as I can on the show, because that matters, right? You have to stand up for the things you believe in. Otherwise, we're all screwed. Anyway, we're going to get your calls and that interview and a bunch more. There's a lot to discuss tonight, so don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337 is the number, 833-4VALDEZ. Again, don't move a muscle. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night, and we're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Tuesday evening, hour number 2 of the program. And we just wrapped up a really good interview with Professor Alan Dershowitz. That was really interesting. A lot of interesting insight that he shared. We're about to jump into another interview in a moment with another presidential candidate. But first, I want to talk about voter registration, right? Voter registration is an important thing, and people should do it, and people should be out there hustling to get people registered and explain the importance. Sure. And of course, on a day like National Voter Registration Day, we should talk about that. However, I think it's important that we realize that this should be something that you go and do, right? Nobody turns in, let's say New York or New Jersey, 16, 17, and just automatically gets a driver's license. They have to go, they do their road test, they apply for a permit. There's a process. And there's a process to register to vote. And once you're registered, then you can vote. And this idea that we're going to automatically register people, I think is a poor one. It's a poor one in many regards, but I want you to hear the governor of Pennsylvania saying that states now become the latest to enact automatic voter registration. So,
Pennsylvania, it is National Voter Registration Day, and today I am proud to announce that for the first time ever, Pennsylvania is an automatic voter registration state. That's right. From now on, when you get or renew your driver's license or an ID card at the DMV, you'll be registered to vote unless you choose not to. I made a commitment when I was campaigning for this office that we would bring automatic voter registration in Pennsylvania and break down the barriers for legal, eligible voters. This is a key step to make our elections more secure, adding important levels of verification to the voter registration process. And by expanding voter registration at our DMVs, we'll save taxpayers time and money, reduce the number of costly paper registrations, and streamline voter registration for Pennsylvanians. Look, this is common sense. You already provide proof of identity, residency, age, and citizenship at the DMV. All the information you need to register to vote. We're making our state government work better for the good people of Pennsylvania. No matter who you choose to vote for or what your views are, I hope you'll make your voice heard. Now more than ever, we need an engaged citizenry to move our country and our Commonwealth forward.
So that's Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And I got to tell you, does this guy sound like he's selling used cars or what? I mean, I wouldn't buy a used car from this guy. Hey, how's it going? Josh Shapiro here with the funny music in the background, real upbeat, real happy. I'm not a fan of this at all. And again, the reason being, there are people that choose not to vote, and that's their prerogative. I hope that they change their mind and they do it, but that's something they've got to do. And when everybody, 100% of the population is now registered to vote, or at least 100% of drivers, because that's the way they're going to do it, right? If you get a driver's license or an ID card at the DMV, you're going to be registered to vote unless you choose not to. Now, again, it sounds innocuous to most. They're like, well, whatever. It saves us a trip. You know what else saves you a trip? When you sign up for a free trial of something and they go, your credit card will not be charged, and you get 30 days free. And the next thing you know, for the next 4 years, you're paying X amount of dollars a month, right? Saved you the trip. Sure, saved you the trip to your wallet to bring out your credit card when you actually wanted to buy it. This is the same type of thing. Even though it's not costing you any money, once you do it, yes, you'll be registered forever. And should you choose to vote in the next 16 years, you're good to go. My issue here is not on that. The issue here really is when you have all of these registered people, and many of them choose not to vote, you have the opportunity for fraud. This is not me saying this. These things were put out by the infamous Carter-Baker Commission report. They said automatic registration, mail-in voting, all sorts of things were included in their report as being fraught with fraud or having the potentiality to be. So we have to sit here and ask ourselves, is this what we want to do? Is registering every last person? There are states where they're saying if you're not a citizen of the United States, you can still get a driver's license. Okay, Great. So now if you have a driver's license, even though you're not a citizen, you'll be automatically registered to vote. This isn't good. This flies in the face of everything that we actually have a registration process for, to make sure that you're legit. Now, of course, he says we're going to have heightened, assurances and whatever and whatnot. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it because ultimately at the end of every election night, you're going to have a handful or more, maybe a boatload of registered voters that haven't voted, and there's the recipe for disaster. Makes sense to me. It's the easiest way to cheat. You already got people that are registered to play the game. They're registered to vote, right? There's already people that are registered to vote that don't go and vote. So I think it's important that the people fight back on this and push, because once they start making everything automatic and everything easy, it's going to cost you. Trust me, it's going to cost you. Think about, the old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. In recent years, public schools have been pushing to have every student, whether they wanted free lunch or not, or reduced lunch, free or reduced lunch, whether they wanted it or not, they were telling you, fill out the application, because the school wanted to say, look how many students we have applying every year, look how much, they could potentially get in that type of funding. And it's becoming easier and easier to get. And the reason it's becoming easier and easier to get is because, again, platitudes. They'll come out and say, well, look, there's kids that the only meal they get is at a school. And this, okay, granted, that's all true. But if the kid needs the school lunch, then they should apply for it. Great. If a kid doesn't need it, then he shouldn't apply for it. It's that simple to me. The issue with that is, in my opinion, they're trying to create a system where lunch is now free for everybody all the time. Now you're thinking, Rich, what's wrong with feeding kids school lunch for free? It costs money. It costs money. And it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost me money. It's going to cost the government money. And ultimately, you're creating a way to have people that are permanently dependent on the government for a school lunch, for a reduced lunch, for their voter registration, even if they're not a citizen. There's a pattern here. It's government dependence. The governor knows that this could be a problem, and he moved forward with it anyway. Not a good idea. Very bad call, in my opinion. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of the 2024 issues that are facing Republican candidates with debates coming up, and we're going to talk with Hirsh Singh. He's scheduled to be with us in the next segment about his campaign for president. He's a Republican candidate vying for the Republican nomination in 2024. So keep it locked right here. Give a call if you want to talk to Hirsh Singh and ask him a couple of questions. Feel free. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And as part of our series on candidate profiles for the 2024 Republican nomination, I want to bring in a guest. Hirsh Singh is a Republican from New Jersey that's running for president, and I want to get to know him, and I want you to get to know him. I want to hear about his campaign, and I want to hear about his views on the news. Hirsh Singh, welcome to the program.
Hey, Rich, great to be here. Just want to say this is a great show, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I feel like it's warranted to spend a little bit of time. We have about a half hour together, and we're going to chop it up into a couple of segments so we could take our time with this stuff. But I think it's warranted that you tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I mean, I got involved politically when Ron Paul first started running for president in 2008. I joined the Young Americans for Liberty as a student. Was very much so about his presidential campaign in 2012. As being a part of the Young Americans for Liberty, I helped make Rand Paul a U.S. Senator. And even in New Jersey, 2013, I helped our U.S. Senate candidate that year go against Cory Booker. And even Chris Christie, 2009, I was a supporter of his. I've always been very active politically. And in 2017, I decided that if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And I got involved running statewide. In 2020 for U.S. Senate, we got within 1% of winning the Republican nomination, despite only having the support of 4 counties in South Jersey. And, you know, when you have the support of a county, what that means is you get a preferred placement on the New Jersey ballot. Right. So, for example, in 2020, President Trump is at the top, and then the U.S. Senate candidate is right below. So I was right below President Trump in only 4 counties, even though I was a strong supporter of his. And my opponent, who was kind of not really a conservative, he was underneath President Trump in 17 of the other counties. So despite that disadvantage, we were right within 1% of winning, even though you had all that vote by mail nonsense. So as a candidate, as someone born and raised in Jersey, I connect really, really well with the full spectrum that is underneath the umbrella of Republicans, from the libertarians, the conservatives, the devout Christians, the devout Catholics, as well as those that are just economically focused, your Mitt Romney Republicans and the such. And so due to my age, I'm also on the younger side. I'm 38. I get along really well with those that are still in college, and you know, I can galvanize in a very strong way our values, and I never back down from the critiques of the left. So as a candidate, if I were to get the Republican nomination, I'm very confident I would not only make sure that we move the executive branch in the Republican direction, I think that we would be able to really take the U.S. Senate in a strong way and the House in a strong way, such that we can help guide this country out of the division and just absolute corruption at certain levels of government that needs to be cleaned up, rooted out, and removed.
All right, Hirsh Singh, let's talk about your background in terms of outside of politics. What type of background do you work in now?
So my background is engineering. I'm a trained problem solver. I've been specifically in the areas of missile defense, satellite navigation, aviation safety, security, basically helping ensure we find solutions that make sure that America remains number one in all those critical areas. And I'm basically a nerd who's very patriotic and loves to make sure we dominate.
Where does that love of country come from, this willingness for the United States to dominate?
Well, I think that we're the only beacon in the entire world where if there are problems elsewhere, you can count on the potential help of America coming through. When you see tyrannical governments in other parts of the world, it's America that is looked upon as the only potential saving grace to correct the course. And the issue is, if things go bad here, there's no one to come and save us. There is no other power in the world that's going to come and protect us if we have a problem. And it just looks like the divisions within the population and the vitriolic level of the political discourse has gotten to such a point that it needs to be remedied. It needs to be fixed, because there is no other shining city on a hill. This is America. We have to protect it.
You talk about the vitriol that's in our public discourse, and I agree with it. I see it every day. And I know that there was a time where it wasn't as divisive as it is now. Why do you think we've arrived at this juncture? How did we get here?
I think it's because people have thought short term on trying to win a political point. And when you're thinking long term, you're not just trying to win a couple points in the moment. I guess it's like the idea, if you put a rat in a corner, it's going to fight with a strength of like 10 rats. But if you give a way out, it'll run away. And our politics has become so adversarial that those that disagree with us, it's become too personal. And I think we need to move away from that. We need to move in the direction of winning on principle, leading the American people, and having higher ideals, and not this race to the bottom that we've seen, I think, play out very horribly across the political spectrum. And that comes from leadership. It doesn't come from, everyday people having good values. You have to lead from the top, and then it gets replicated.
What do you think about the leadership that we currently have in the White House right now?
I mean, there's no one there. Okay. I mean, it's very unfortunate, but he's unable to perform the duties that are required. And he shouldn't even be there. That's my personal opinion. He should not be there. He shouldn't be there to begin with, because I don't feel that 2020 was handled in a legitimate manner. The U.S. Supreme Court should have properly adjudicated the concerns of 2020 so that people could put it to bed. But because they didn't take their responsibility seriously and they abdicated their responsibility, you have this wound in the minds of the American people. And with his inability to perform, that memory gets magnified. So that's the problem. We don't have leadership. And you have certain candidates out there talking about destroying the agencies of the federal government. And I think that's very, very wrong, because someone like a President Biden, who is very limited in what he's able to actually perform, if these agencies weren't there, America, I think, could very easily fall into anarchy and chaos. We need law and order. We need, to make sure people feel safe. And these agencies are the ones doing it. And that's why I feel like we have to make sure that we root out the partisanship in government. There should be zero partisanship, and allow the political discourse to really be focused on issues, and may the best argument win. Let the American people decide, and let the best argument win. I think that's how we can fix this, but it's really tragic, the situation we're in.
Folks, we're on with Hirsh Singh. His website is hirshsingh.com. He's a candidate for president in 2024, running for the Republican nomination. He's up against Trump, DeSantis, Elder, and all the rest of the guys that are in this game. So we're going to talk about his campaign straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. If you want to ask him a question, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
I've known you several years now. I want the audience to know what a wonderful, decent person you are. Very, very thoughtful.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The United States seeks a more secure, more prosperous, more equitable world for all people, because we know our future is bound to yours. Let me repeat that again. We know our future is bound to yours. And no nation can meet the challenges of today alone.
That's President Joe El Baboso Biden at the UN today, saying that we seek a more prosperous, more equitable world for all people. Now, of course, Joe Biden's always singing a different song, and rarely is he on beat when he's singing it. But this is what we've got. And we've got a myriad of problems that are facing the nation, and Joe Biden seems to be creating the problems rather than fixing the problems. We're on with our guest, Hirsh Singh. He's a Republican from New Jersey that's running for president in the 2024 Republican nomination. And Hirsh Singh, when you hear President Biden say that we're looking for a more prosperous, more equitable world for all people. What do you think of these platitudes?
I just can't get out of my head that Speaker McCarthy needs to make sure that he gets treated and this administration gets treated the same way President Trump and his administration were treated. There should be a vote on impeachment, and it should happen immediately, and there should be no delay. I think that the fact that nothing is able to move in a direction which is positive and we have all this inside fighting is because there's a lack of leadership in the House to call an impeachment vote and allow everyone to show where they stand. Anyone who is a Republican and does not vote for impeachment, they need to be primaried in 2024. And I'm pretty confident that that vote will make it through. It'll go to the U.S. Senate and let the American people see who is with the American people and who is against us. Even if the vote fails, that'll be information so we can guide our 2024 energy and direction so we can kind of help fix and ameliorate the concerns in the country. That's what comes to my mind when I hear President Biden speak, because the evidence that has come out against him, against his family, is all over the public, yet the media pretends like they don't see it. So we need to have a vote, present it to the Republican congressman, and have them ask the tough questions, vote on it, let the American people see who's authentic, who's not, and move it to the Senate.
Now, Hirsh Singh, I want to jump into that topic with you in the next segment, but right now I want to focus on the vote for you. Right, I want you to kind of let the audience know why you decided to run for president. It's clearly not an easy task, but one that I think is an important one. Why should people vote for you? Why are you running?
Because I love America, and it's falling apart. And once again, if there was someone else who was able to do what's necessary to fix it, I would gladly enjoy life. But this, like all problems, isn't going to fix itself. So I've thrown myself into it. Today is day 54 of the campaign. Compared to other campaigns, most of those campaigns have been around for over 120, 130, 150 days. We have 118 days from today for the first Republican competition over in Iowa, January 15th. So we're right about hitting the first 1/3 of the duration of this campaign. And the first third was focused on creating the foundation. The second third is going to be about creating the web. And the third is going to be all about broadcasting from one corner of the country to the other. Because if people get to know the ideas that I have, which are conservative, America first, people-centric, and then if they understand kind of what I bring to the table, my history, and how that actually can bring the different factions, worlds, perspectives together and encourage and lead, what it will do is kind of ameliorate the problems we've seen over the last number of years. And in a general election, we would be able to have a landslide victory against the outdated left. You know, we need to remove these outdated politicians of a bygone era. And it's very specific how you have to campaign, who you need to target. Some people are out there trying to be celebrities. That's not what wins you an election. They're very specific people that vote. You need to get to them. You need to get them to understand the values that I bring to the table. And I think that's how you make the case, and that's how you win.
Right. Well, we have some voters. Thankfully, this program airs across the country, and we have millions of listeners. And we have some callers on the line that want to ask you some questions about your campaign. So we're going to go to Matt in Morehead City, North Carolina, WTKF. Matt, you're on with Hirsh Singh and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. I have a question from Mr. Singh, a couple questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Mr. Singh, I'd like the few minutes I heard of your message for voters. How do you plan on beating Trump?
Well, thank you very much, Matt. Great question. I think that I'm a MAGA conservative. I have been a MAGA conservative from day one. I have an unblemished record of support of President Trump. And I think that all I have to do is show people what I stand for, what I'm trying to do, and how that actually helps guide everyone in a direction that America wants. The reality is, prior to me entering this race, you only had President Trump standing for these values, and none of the other candidates could really connect to the base and the people. And so the American people get to decide because Trump is Trump. And the Democrats in New Jersey, the leadership in New Jersey, they call me Trump on steroids. So if the American people, they want Trump, they got Trump. And I have no problem with that. I support their decision. But if they want someone who would be Trump on steroids, I think that that's what we can offer and deliver.
Now, Hirsh, how would you I think that's a great name, by the way, Trump on steroids. How do you, I guess, manifest this Trump on steroids to actually beat Trump? Like, how do you out-Trump Trump?
I think you don't have to out-Trump Trump. You just have to be authentic. I mean, when you hear him, he's very authentic and he's genuine. And I don't think he is lacking in what he has done. It's actually the people that he has surrounded himself with. He has gatekeepers that I think have severely damaged him in his previous, campaigns. I think that even during his administration, he was not aware of a lot of things going on. Even today, I think you yourself might have seen, Rich, he gets tweets and things that are on the internet printed out and given to him. And he will see it, sign it, write a message, and send it back. It's not him writing those tweets, not him online. So he's being blamed for the actions of others. And I think if people are okay with that, that's fine. But I think it's a weakness. It's a concern, and it's a problem that the people that surround him, some of them are not good people. And they've proven that by promoting bad candidates over the years and throwing good candidates under the bus. So I think that if people are okay with that, that's fine. So be it. But there was no one else who was even an option for the American people, for the American base. And all I'm trying to do is to present that.
All right. Folks, we're on with Hirsh Singh on his 2024 campaign for the Republican nomination for president. Hirsh Singh, with 2 minutes to go in this segment, I want to ask you about probably the biggest problem we face domestically, in my opinion. Not only, I think it's tied neck and neck, inflation with the actual abuse that's within our government, the administrative state, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, and this class of government gangsters that occupy so many parts of our government, if not all, and they're the ones that are really kind of leading the agenda. How do you take that on?
You need to remove the partisanship from government. And it really is, it's a concerning problem because we're seeing it rear its head all over the place. People need to understand how government works. You need to make sure that those in government that have caused any type of issue, they need to be rooted out. There are very key ways in trying to do that. Even though there are maybe difficulties in firing people, you can make a mockery of them. You can create an agency which is named an agency that holds individuals that people have no confidence in, and literally transfer people from there to this agency, anyone who is partisan. And then they can decide, do they want to sit there doing nothing because they were doing nothing in their current agency, or do they want to quit? And I think that is a way that you start de-emphasizing any type of partisanship without actually causing legal challenges, because you would need congressional approval to rampantly change the way things have been functioning. You need to understand how actual agencies work to root out all types of partisanship, and I think it will solve the problem very, very quickly.
Sounds easier said than done, but I like the way it's going. Folks, we're on with Hirsh Singh. He's a Republican candidate for president in 2024. We're coming right back with your calls, questions, and comments. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
He's been on the campaign trail for less than 2 months. Hirsh Singh is a Republican from New Jersey running for president in 2024, vying for the Republican nomination. Hirsh Singh, what do you do on day one of a Singh administration?
On day one of a Singh administration, I would give the big tech companies in America a choice. Either they get to be a publisher or they get to be a technology company. And if they choose technology company, they're no longer able to censor. They're no longer able to try and guide and control speech. And if they are a publisher, then they're able to be sued based upon their censorship or otherwise. And I think that is number one, because the big tech censorship has completely gone out of control. Two, I would end the Ukrainian war on day one. I'm really, really confident that war needs to be ended. It's a neocon war. It's a religious war. They're putting priests in prison, and it's destabilizing the entire world. It's no good for us. I do not agree with it. I don't think it's in America's best interest. I would end that on day one. I would ensure.
How do you do that?
The other side does not want this. I believe we antagonized it. We forced it. If you listen to Colonel Doug McGregor, he went into depth on Tucker Carlson on X and actually described I would say accurately the situation. If we would handle NATO appropriately, there is no need for this conflict. And it's really a tragedy with the number of people that are dying because of those in our current government that have hijacked American foreign policy.
What do you say to people that say that Putin and Russia's aggression is what started this war, and it's not the handling of NATO that got us here?
There's a Newsweek article that came out just earlier today, which basically said we can no longer keep up with these lies, and that they've basically been creating these talking points for an extended period of time that have kind of given people that thought. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not probably the last time it's going to happen. But, to that end, the two other things on day one would be reinstating anyone who is removed from our military or our federal government because they did not take the COVID vaccine. And I think one of the real big things, because inflation has completely run amok and is hurting people financially very, very severely, I would put together a commission for the removal of the income tax because people deserve that if they're supposed to be making $100K a year, that's how much they're getting. And so I would put together a commission to allow people to start being able to afford this economy. Where in California right now, you have over $7 a gallon of gas. So those are the four things. But yeah, to Russia.
I'm glad you brought up the economy and your economic plan, because I want to talk about that. I feel like that's the most pressing issue. James Carville, the Raging Cajun, once advised President Bill Clinton to say that it's the economy, stupid. And with that being said, I think that's, at least for me, I just filled up my car today. It was $102, and I filled it up in North Jersey. And I think this is not sustainable for a lot of people. And I think the economy is probably a number one issue for most people. It's definitely the issue where Biden polls the lowest. And that being said, how do you begin to reverse inflation, to lower inflation, to try to bring it back to maybe the levels that it was at during the Trump years?
Spot on. It's a big problem, and it's a tragedy that we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars abroad while people have to make decisions on can they actually fill their full tank of gas, or should they only get $10 or $20 worth because, money is so tight. Do they eat? Do they pay their rent, their mortgage? It's a big, big problem, and it's so fixable if we untap our economy. The fact that we closed down that pipeline that would have made America the largest oil producer in the entire world, and that we're actually squeezing our strategic petroleum reserve right now, and Biden's saying it's okay to completely deplenish it. It's unacceptable. I think that we completely untap the American economy when it comes to energy, and we make this country affordable, and we stop taxing everyone into the ground. And we literally, the Federal Reserve Chairwoman was asked what she thought about the high price of gas, and she said gas is affordable. She said that today. So I think that they are out of touch with the reality of everyday people that are struggling. And so once we make it affordable for everyday people and we make it possible for those that are even on the low end of financial strength, they start having money in their pocket, the problems in this country will evaporate so fast. We also got to take care of the attorney generals that are allowing criminals out in the street and make it a law-abiding world again. But those are two sides, right? One side is make sure people have financial freedom in their pocket. The second side is bring back law and order, and I will do that.
Folks, Hirsh Singh is a Republican candidate for governor. Check out his website, hirshsingh.com. Hirsh, I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time with us. I really appreciate it. Best of luck.
Rich, it's great to be here. I have true pleasure. Your show is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to coming back and hopefully in the near future and giving you great updates.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Godspeed. Folks, more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more right now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. With Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. I'm looking at this article here. According to records that were recently revealed, Dr. Fauci and his wife's net worth exceeded $11 million when he departed his government position. Now, again, I want everybody to be a millionaire. I really do. However, I just have to ask myself, these guys should dedicate themselves with a masterclass to teaching how to make these investments they make, because last I checked, Dr. Fauci spent his entire career in government and married a woman that worked in government. So let's just say he was the richest, the highest paid government worker, which he was, something to the tune of $300,000 or $400,000 a year. He was making more than the president, that was for sure. And his wife was making a good salary. Still, do you save every penny? Do you make good investments? What kind of house are you buying? I just think it looks a little funny to me. And I'd love to learn how to invest on a salary like that to come out with a net worth that's more than $10 million. Anyway, we're going to continue with your calls straight ahead. Open Phone America starts right now, 833-4VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Welcome to Open Phone America. It's the call-in portion of the program that we love so much here on this program, Rich Valdez, America at Night. A long time-tested tradition on this program dating back to 1978, started by Larry King, continued by Jim Bohannon, and here we go. I'm with you. And we're rocking with open phones tonight. So if you want to give us a call, 833-482-5337. You get to weigh in on any of the topics we talked about, or Just bring one to the table. Happy to hear what you want to talk about. I'm going to do a little bit of politics here because we did so much of it this evening, but I want to talk about some other crazy stuff. Just so you know, my producer just told me, he says, I can't believe it's not salmon. Yeah, there's a story about salmon that we're going to get into. That's pretty interesting. They're banning pit bulls in the UK. That's nuts. And a guy saw his wife have a C-section, and he says it destroyed his marriage. So that's some of the silly stuff I want to get into. But earlier today, I posted something on Twitter, and it was a question. It was a photo of Vice President Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama, former First Lady. And simple question was, do you think a Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama ticket could be a thing? Well, it's gotten several thousand views, and there's lots of comments on it that I'm going to share some of them with you. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because I don't know if it's a thing or not. It was really just a question. But that was my question. Here are some of the answers. They'll likely dump Harris. This is from Steve Eisenberg. He says they'll likely dump Harris. Newsom and Michelle might have some traction on the Democrat side. Then I got some vomit face emojis from Rick Mann. Then Jim Williams chimes in saying, scary as hell if it is a thing. Then at Furthest Corner says, I hope not. And then Dante says, I hope so. I also hope so, by the way. And let's see what we got here. And then there's a lot of comments about Michelle Obama's, I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase this. A lot of people are saying she's a man, which I don't understand why. I mean, I know she's tall, but I mean, I think it's clear that she's a woman. But I think a lot of people, I think it's a running joke, right? I think it's a running joke where they call her Big Mike. And, you know, you kind of laugh at first and then you go, that's really messed up. I'm not doing that. But lots of people here, nobody really chimed in saying, you know, it won't happen, except for one person, Michelle Legend 64. She says, Hillary will never let that happen. Scott T 1391, he says, I think it would push minority men to the Republican side. These people are very weak. Can you imagine them handling a worldwide crisis? Yeah, I could see that not happening. Everybody, let me see. Yeah, some of these are derogatory, so I really can't say them on the air. Let's see. One says, I'd vote for Malik Obama first. That's President Obama's brother, who I believe endorsed Trump in the election in 2020. Somebody else said, my eyeballs are bleeding. Others are saying, Lord, help us. And Tulsa Mike says, 98% possibility. And so many more. I'll leave this up here. It's up on my Twitter page if you want to chime in, and I'll try and get to your comments on it. But that was my question and my thought that, you know, does Biden bail out early and Kamala run in 24? Does Biden try to win and then bail out? I don't see Biden sticking around for 4 more years. I think this stint of 4 years has been the longest 4-year stint ever. I mean, even though it seems like 2020 was yesterday, the damage and the amount of money we've all had to pay in inflation and just the drama and the amount of news and scandals that have come out of this administration have just been, I don't know, they feel unprecedented for me. Probably the only one that beats them is Trump, because they fabricated so many of these scandals and had special counsel investigations and Mueller investigations and all sorts of investigations that ended with nothing. So, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see where we go with this. Let us go to the phones. I want to get some input from the callers. Wilmington, Delaware, let's go to Doc. W-D-E-L. Doc, welcome, sir.
Rich, as always, thanks for a great show. Thanks for taking my calls. 2 points.
Well, before you get to your point, I want to know, do you think a Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama ticket is something that's feasible?
No, 2 black ladies. I think what the establishment the Democrat Party is doing is this. The establishment ticket is going to be Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama. Then within the party, because the Democrats are much more rebellious than are the Republicans, they're going to have a divided convention in 1968. I think Bob Kennedy, as you said before, is going to have to be dealt with within the party. He'll get the the rank and file support, and there will be an insurgent movement to elect Bob Kennedy over Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama. I don't see Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama winning nationwide. I see Bob Kennedy surging in the polls right now. If he goes against President Trump, it'll be a populist of the right, President Trump, versus a populist of the left, Bob Kennedy. I want your thoughts, sir.
Listen, it's a feasible, hypothesis that you got there. I would love to see, honestly, I would love to see RFK Jr. Do better than he's doing. I think it would give Democrats an option. I just feel like it's not happening. I mean, he's raising money and he's doing better, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't understand why, because Biden's certainly not doing well. And it seems to me that the right person that Democrats are going to be comfortable with is going to be not so far to the left like Bernie Sanders, or maybe they could be far to the left, but not as progressive and have that progressive firebrand like he does. But not somebody that makes as much sense as RFK Jr. And I think people will go for that. I think he makes too much sense. His positions on certain things like vaccines and other things are inconsistent with the rank and file of the Democrat Party. So I think that's why he's having this failure to launch. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he really does well. I'd love to see him go against any one of the Republican candidates. I think that would be a great matchup. I think your idea about a divided convention could be true. But I've never seen Democrats be divided. Again, it's happened. There's a historical precedent back in the 60s, but I just don't see it happening now. I feel like they're all in with like, no matter what, we got to stick together. And I think that's where they are. So we'll see. I don't think, personally, I say this for fodder, right? I don't even believe it. I don't believe that Michelle Obama will run for anything. I think she's making hundreds of millions of dollars that will dry up the minute she runs for president. Now, maybe not if Obama, her husband, Barack, he can make all that money. But the thing is, I think she in and of herself is a big brand. And a lot of people like Barack because of Michelle. A lot of women are out there thinking that she's the best thing since sliced bread. So with her, that's why I only think she could run for vice president, because she would have the time to do all the ceremonial stuff. She doesn't have to do anything of substance. And not that she's not capable. But just because I think she'd have other things to do. But again, how much of that can you do while you're vice president? You're still taking international trips. You're doing a lot of things. I just don't know. I don't know if it happens. So we'll see. I think I'm really angling. I'm hoping and praying for Kamala Harris, because I feel like Kamala Harris with anybody would be a great ticket, because I think they'd lose. But Kamala Harris, que mala eres, with Michelle Obama, I think actually strengthens the ticket, and they get to go off the deep end, like you said, to women of color. So now they could say, look, the evil white Republican men with white hair, they're all old white men, even the old Indian one, or even the old black one, or even the old whatever one, right? They're all white men. And I think that they would create contrast that way, and they might be able to get a little gravitas with people who that matters to. It obviously worked in 2008. In many ways with hope and change. So I don't know. The answer is I don't know, but interesting. And I can't wait till it happens to see which one of us is right. Doc, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Oh, wait, you had something else. Sorry. I let him go too soon. I got to hit this break. Doc, if you want to call back with your comment on Professor Dershowitz, feel free. Folks, the number 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Ours is an administration that is always focused on equity. Are all people having the same experience? And if not, in particular, what they are entitled to, such as the right to clean water, the right to clean air, then let's address that. So environmental justice is a phrase that we use to talk about that we want to make sure that there is equality and justice for all people.
The quality of clean air, the right to clean air. What kind of clean air does any of us have when a gas bag like emeritus is there blowing wind? Listen, I can't stand this conversation on equity. This country was built on the idea of equality of opportunity, having an equal shot. And some will argue, oh, some have more of a shot than others. Of course they do, because some people have worked harder, right? If your dad made a bunch of money or your mom made a bunch of money and you've got some money and they've got property and they got business and they know people and they may have some political power, you've got better shots at many things: employment, future success in career, maybe getting into a better school. That's life. And it's part of our job to fight to get that position. I think the moment that we say, no, everybody's got the same opportunity, what's the benefit of working hard to become a millionaire and a billionaire and a trillionaire, right? There's no benefit if everybody has the same opportunity. That means the guy who's done nothing for anybody, for himself, for his family, for this community, nothing. That guy has the same shot as somebody who's living off of the hard work of the back of his grandpa and his grandma and his dad and his mom. I just don't see it. I think hard work pays off, and that's how life works. If that's the case, I'm waking up with a six-pack tomorrow, just like the guy who's been dieting like crazy and measuring, his 4 ounces of grilled chicken and working out and doing crunches like a madman, and I'm going to have a six-pack too, eating White Castle. Come on. It just doesn't work that way in life. Anyway, let's continue with your calls on equality, on anything else you want to talk about. Let's see, where was I? had left off with, let's go to Lucky, Durango, Colorado, KDGO. Lucky, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, can you hear me?
Yep, America hears you.
Beautiful. I wanted to call and thank you for having Hirsh Singh on as a presidential candidate. I'd never had heard of him before you brought him to the airwaves.
Sure.
And I found him to be a bit of a refreshing candidate. And I was specifically calling in with your question to him about the people that think that the Russian aggression was the cause of the Ukrainian war. And I wanted to bring up a few points. Back in 2014, Ukraine actually had a colored revolution, and you can argue about who was the members of any intelligence agency that may have funded that or not. But prior to that point, it had been a fairly pro-Russian government, and after that point, it was a very anti-Russian government. And of course, that's when Russia reclaimed Crimea, which actually was transferred over to Ukrainian territory in 1954, I believe, by Khrushchev. Prior to that, for, at least a few hundred years, it had been Russian territory. Also, that's where Russia apparently only has their only warm water naval base.
Right.
So obviously, it was very strategically important for Russia to maintain, control of that area. And once the anti-Russian government came into Ukraine, they actually started bombing Lugansk and Donetsk, I believe the two regions are.
Yeah.
In the eastern Ukraine, which are predominantly filled with Russian people. Now, you can argue why the Russians are in Ukraine. And
you got to get to the point, Lucky.
Okay, well, my point is that everything that most of the media reports about it being Russian aggression is not, in fact, at all true. And the guy that Hirsh Singh mentioned, Douglas McGregor, is actually very factual and has a lot of good points. But if you do any history on the lesson, you'll realize that it's actually the Ukrainians who have been killing Russian civilians in the eastern part of Ukraine since 2014. And, like Russia or hate Russia, they weren't the ones that instigated a lot of it. And so it was, in fact, I would argue it was the CIA under Obama.
Sure, I would agree with that. The problem that I have with any of those theories is ultimately how it was the Russian army that amassed, 100,000 troops on the border of Ukraine, and left them there for, 15, 20 days or whatever, saying that they were doing a training exercise. Only to once they had amassed the amount of people they needed, they went in to take the Donetsk region. And they took it, and Ukrainians fought back, and they keep fighting, and they continued to fight a war where they had air power, and the Ukrainians had none. And this continues to go on today. I can't sit idly by and say, oh, well, Ukraine, all of Ukraine was once a part of Russia. Therefore, they're just reclaiming their old territory. That's like somebody coming to the house that I live in and saying, oh, I used to live here years ago. You're in my room. F you, I'm going to shoot you. So that's my position there. I don't see any defense of what Russia's done here. I think that Russia is guilty as sin. Now there's talk of biolabs and this, that, and the other. Putin could have bombed these biolabs and been done with it. Strategic stuff. Use the equivalent of a SEAL team. Russia is a military power, but they didn't do that. They're in a long and involved war, and then all I can do is take Putin at his word. And he himself authored a 500-page document, 3 or 4 years ago, and he said, we're taking back everything that was once part of the Russian Empire, which included all of Ukraine. So, again, I understand that there was property that was leased in Crimea, where they had their naval operations. Great. We can lease stuff to anybody we want, but ultimately your lease expires or you get evicted, and then you got to go, right? You don't get to say, I'm coming back with my army and we're going to take everything over. So I do agree that there's a propaganda war on both sides. I do agree that the CIA under Obama was doing very shady things. In fact, probably promoted by Joe El Baboso Biden himself while he was there. We've seen some of the dirt that he was doing while he was there. But I don't think Vladimir Putin gets a pass, nor is he a hero. I think he is trying to take as much power and real estate as he can, and it doesn't mean that Zelensky and the Ukrainians are innocent either. So that's where I stand on it. Lucky, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Big shout out to Durango, Colorado, KDGO. We're coming back to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead.
No hair, no care, and live on the air. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. I want to continue with your calls. We have a lot of people that want to weigh in on everything that's going on tonight. Let's go to Jose in Myrtle Beach. WRNN. Go right ahead.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Wonderful, thank you.
Sorry about my voice. I'm getting over COVID, so
that's all right. I didn't know how you sounded before, so you sound terrific.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a couple quick questions. Who do you think Trump would pick as a running mate if he got on the ticket? And then my other question is, when is this border thing going to be taken seriously?
So the border thing doesn't get taken seriously until you get a Republican in there that's really strong. And even then, they may have, it depends on, what type of balance we have in the House and the Senate and how much they can get done. But I can guarantee you, we've already seen Trump do what he did. I think he was pretty solid on it. I think there's other candidates out there now that are saying, we'll be tougher than Trump. Okay, good luck. I hope you are. I want the toughest one to win, and I hope that's the case. In terms of picking a running mate, I really feel that Trump will probably pick a wild card, just like he did with Pence. Nobody saw that one coming, and he went with that. So I don't know. There are days I think that, Ron Johnson might be a person he plucks out and says, hey, you're the guy, even though they had some issues in the past. There are days where I think might be Carrie Lake, who was his pick for governor in Arizona, but I hear she might be running for the U.S. Senate. So I really don't know. Whatever the case is, I think Trump's going to pick somebody that's going to help him win and put him over the top. I would think that's got to be somebody from a Midwestern state or from the South. But again, conventional wisdom goes out the window when you're dealing with Trump and all the nuance that comes in the news, because, every day there's a new story against Trump. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one, Jose.
All right. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You bet, brother. Feel better, by the way. Big shout out to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Let us continue. Let us go to Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, go right ahead.
What is up, Richie Rich?
My man. I was waiting for you.
Hey, I know you are. Hey, I know who you should pick for his running mate. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yay!
There you go.
Whack job. Oh, yeah, pick her. I would love that. But that's not what I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I really had a great weekend. I got to watch Ken Paxton, slimy Ken Paxton, weasel his way out of a conviction. And then on Sunday, I got to watch Donald J. Trump, Mr. 219 pounds, so he says, with his interview with Kristen Welker. Now, wasn't that special? I had a great weekend.
Well, what was your favorite part of the interview?
Well, the whole interview, just watching him tap dance for minutes upon minutes, it's just a special thing, man. It's just a special, and not answering any questions. He never, I would answer that if you would let me talk. I'm saying, damn, man, you dominated the whole interview. What do you mean if you let you talk? What's he talking about?
Excuse me. Now, Jerome, I know you want to talk about Ken Paxton. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, his own people, the people that work for him, were the ones that say, you got to do something about this guy. He's got a mistress. He's taking kickbacks. He's crooked as crooked can be. And in the end, what happened?
He wins. He gets acquitted. Nothing happens to him. He was vindicated and cleared of all charges.
Yeah. All legitimate, right?
Well,
Right?
it went through the process, right? I think I had to eat it when they impeached El Trompito once. They impeached him twice. I complain. We eat it. We move on, right? Here we are running for president again. That's how it works.
Testify. He didn't testify. I was just wondering, is Trump going to be able, when those trials start, with him and his compatriots start, when their trials start, are they going to be allowed to not testify?
Well, of course, that's a constitutional right. Right? You have a right to testify, to defend yourself, Sixth Amendment right. Then you have a Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself and to say, you plead the Fifth. So, I mean, thank God we have constitutional rights that allow for that.
If he testifies, all of America is going to be watching.
Of course, if he says anything, all of America's watching, right? NBC News is a new thing again. Meet the Press probably had the best ratings ever with the Kristen Welker interview. But I'll tell you this, where I'd love to see Trump testify is in Congress. I would love to see him testify in Congress and be the voice of reason, to come out here and say, here's what I saw as president, to kind of just spill the beans on everything. I think that would be terrific. And I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I'd love to see it. Jerome, thanks for your call. I appreciate the entertainment and the alternative view. Always a pleasure. Big shout out to Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Let's go to the Welker interview. I'm getting in my ear from my producer. The most viewed Sunday program. Do you think it was because of Kristen Welker? Come on. Just shy of 3 million viewers. So there you go. Now, let's go to Monica in Pendleton, Oregon on KUMA. Monica, go right ahead.
Hi. Good evening, Rich.
Hi.
Just to start off with, just on a quick little side note, my father, Richard Greene, he's quite infamous here, he's always wanted a businessman for president. And we all know that our Donald Trump was a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
But on the main topic at hand, which is just, bugged me for years, there's all these touts of freedom of speech. And I see, I was taught that freedom comes with responsibility. So less than, you speak of something, one's got to know what they're talking about and do a fact check because they need to be held accountable for what they're touting off about. And in my view, they tout off a bunch of profanities, they look stupid. So that's about all I can come up with at the moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for taking my call.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How's the weather in Pendleton, Oregon? KUMA.
Oddly, right now it's really windy. I'm hoping we'll have some rain. We have a cold front moving through. We're supposed to have winds about roughly 20 miles an hour tomorrow. Tonight, the temperatures are supposed to drop like in the higher 40s, and tomorrow, I believe it's supposed to get in the 80s, just high winds. And
wow.
I'm not a fan of dry winds. I'm hoping we will get rain.
Yeah, but 80 doesn't sound too bad. Monica, thanks for the weather report, and I think you've got a great point. I appreciate it. Big shout out to Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA in the building. Folks, I'm going to take a quick pause right here. We're going to come back to your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Vanna White has been reinstated on Wheel of Fortune. She's back and she's making more money than ever. God bless her. I was just telling somebody a funny story. Somebody sent, the things on the internet are crazy. People put all sorts of information on the internet. Somebody put sent me something saying congratulations with a link to my net worth on the internet. And it was in the millions. It was north of 10 million. And I thought, man, this is fantastic. I love this. This is great. While not accurate, still fun nonetheless. But Vanna White is expected to be getting a raise, the first raise in many years. And she's back. And I'm glad she's back. What is Wheel of Fortune without Pat and Vanna? If you get Pat's gone, all right, let's just stick with Vanna, right? You don't want to change it up too much. I mean, sometimes change can be good, but it takes getting used to, and come on. Nobody turns a letter like Vanna White. Let's continue with your calls. Let's go to Todd, Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Todd, you're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Great show. I really enjoyed your interview with Mr. Dershowitz, and I was a little intrigued that you didn't see the connection between the left and what's being done to him with this 65 group, the persecution of lawyers. I mean, to me, this is the long march of communism in America starting in 1919, and this is the bitter fruit from that, on all levels. All of this
Oh,
stuff
for sure. Well, I think he alluded to that on multiple occasions, saying this is, the radical left, the far left. And he's right. And that's, the far left, the radical progressive movement, whatever you want to call it, all of them have their roots. These are all communist sympathizers wrapped in new wrapping, right? They're dressed in drag, as the great one would say. And lamentably, that's where we are. And you're right. And while he has a negative view of McCarthy for whatever reasons he had, ultimately, when I look back at Joe McCarthy, I think Joe McCarthy was right? He may have lost credibility and had issues and was censured, but all of that aside, he was sounding the alarm for the Red Scare, and rightfully so, because look at us today. and it's redder than ever, Todd.
Yeah. And, with the, equity, environmental equity, the Marxists have taken their red pentagram and simply painted it green. And I think there was an author had a book called New Lies for Old. So, it's astounding. And also, the guests that you're having on, they're all victims of this political persecution. These progressive Marxists, these woke fascists. I mean, Mayor Giuliani, Kash Patel, Mr. Dershowitz. It's like every night the lady from Eastern Europe with her kid in college, the kids in school. You're having so many guests on. They're being persecuted by this. Marxism is political and cultural Satanism, and it just kind of blows my mind sometimes. I hear your guests, and it's like, it's kind of surreal. But
it really is.
David Horowitz, he would be a good guest.
We've had him on. We had him on recently, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago.
Well, did he ever debate Dershowitz about the left? Or
I don't know.
The ACLU is the American Communist Liars United.
Yeah, sadly, right? I mean, a once great organization that now really doesn't defend many civil liberties and kind of turns a blind eye when a lot of them get abused. Where was the ACLU on so much of the censorship that went on with during the pandemic and from big tech and from the government itself moving forward? We've seen so much and we've learned so much, and in retrospect, they did nothing. So yeah, good point. I appreciate it. For Todd, in Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA, excellent call. And let me see. We pause here and we come back with calls from South Carolina, Maryland, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. Check in with Frank. Frank, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
As fast as I can, you mentioned Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy was given a raw deal. You've heard of the Venona tapes, I'm sure. They revealed that McCarthy was right. Harry Hopkins was right next to President Roosevelt. He was working for the commies. But there's a wonderful story by a man who was the Secretary of the Navy. He was a senator from Maryland. I forget his name now. But he told about two spies named Burgess and McLean who were working at the British Embassy. And the Koreans, the Red Chinese never would have invaded North Korea if they hadn't been assured by Burgess and McLean that MacArthur would not use nuclear weapons. If they thought MacArthur would have used nuclear weapons against the Communist Chinese, they never would have come south and defeated, pretty tied us in Korea. McCarthy really was onto something. There was a man named, I forget his name now, but he was the editor of the New Republic who was slamming McCarthy all the time. He was a friend of Burgess and McLean. He knew what they were doing in Korea, and he let it happen.
Well, I didn't know that story, and I'm glad you shared it. And what I could say is you could say a lot of things about McCarthy and McCarthyism, but had we listened to that admonition back then, today we'd be in better shape. Instead of, dealing with politicians that are so incredibly sympathetic with communist ideas that it's scary. And lamentably, that's where we are, Frank. I appreciate your call. Big shout out to Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC, great station. Let's continue. Let's go to Robert in Charleston, South Carolina. Go right ahead, WTMA.
Hi. Okay, thank you very much for taking my call, Rich.
Yes,
I
sir.
just wanted to let you know that
sir, you're right about that. You're 100% right. But it's the question of how you fight communism, not anything else, because you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable or threatened. We should do it like they do in Monaco, Monte Carlo. Monaco, Monte Carlo is probably the best protected country per square meter of any place in the world, but you rarely see a policeman and you practically never see a camera. Although every square meter in Monaco, Monte Carlo, every common area meter is observed. They can seal the border in a minute and 20 seconds. Nobody gets out of there in one piece if they ever steal or car or something like that. They'll never get out of there because by the time they'll notice that the car is being stolen, and they'll call the border guard really fast and seal it off. And the thing is, what we should do is the same thing, basically. We should work very hard on quantum physics and get way ahead when it comes to the use of photons, both for radio transmissions and for light, and also gravitons for the control of through gravitational force. In other words, streaming gravitons. And there are other subatomic particles in the core of the atom as well. And by getting up on that stuff and being way ahead of them, I'm talking generations ahead, and not advertising it too much, is a good thing to do. Now, if they start threatening us, then then Donald Trump did the right thing again. The little guy said to him, "Yeah, I got this big red button on my desk, and if you don't cooperate with me, I'll give you some trouble." So Donald Trump says, "Yeah, I got one on my desk too. It's bigger and it works."
Yeah, good point. I'll tell you this. Look, I'm not in favor of a police state, but we're there, right? We're there, and we're getting closer. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story about my car was parked outside my house. And once a week, I have to move it to one side or the other for street cleaning and whatever. And I didn't move it fast enough. And I got a ticket. And I also got a ticket for expired registration, which I thought I'd renewed. But the reason the cop knew that I was expired was not because he just randomly ran my plate, was because the police cars are outfitted with plate readers. And it's just another example of the police state is alive and well. And we're getting closer and closer. And if the people that push the environment, social governance movement, the ESG movement, if they get their way, we're going to have even more surveillance. And that's more control for the government with the corporations. And that doesn't sound like liberty to me. Robert, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Take care, good night, and God bless. Thank you for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Hope to speak with you all tomorrow as well. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, I am Rich Valdez, and I'll be back tomorrow. Keep it locked right here. There's more programming after this.